So, those really big questions that just get under your skin.
The fundamental ones.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where do we actually come from? What's our real story? And if you're someone who likes to, dig into things, you've probably stumbled across some pretty wild ideas about that.
Oh, absolutely. There's some fascinating narratives out there.
Well, today we're doing a deep dive into one of the most intriguing intersections I can think of, where these really ancient stories kind of collide with modern science.
Right. It's about taking a look at a story that's had a real hold on people's imaginations for a long time and putting it side by side with the picture science has built up. It's quite the comparison.
It really is. So the specific topic today, the Anunnaki creation myth, the one really popularized by Zecharia Sitchin.
Ah, yes, Sitchin.
And we're comparing that directly with what science understands about human evolution right here in, 2025.
And the sources we're using are pretty different, aren't they? On one side, you've got ancient Sumerian texts, like the Atrahasis epic. That's key for the Anunnaki narrative.
Okay, the Atrahasis.
And then, totally different, you have the scientific evidence, fossils, DNA, even astronomy comes into it. A huge body of work.
So our mission, basically, is to unpack the key claims in Sitchin's version of the Anunnaki story.
Yeah, what did he actually propose happened?
Right, and then see how that holds up against the scientific account. Trying to figure out what's ancient storytelling, powerful storytelling maybe, and what's actually backed by evidence today.
Precisely. Separating the myth, however compelling, from the scientifically supported reality of our origins.
Okay, let's start with the myth part then, the Anunnaki. Now, these figures, they pop up in ancient Mesopotamian mythology, right?
They do. In the Sumerian belief system, they were deities, often seen as children of the sky god, Anu. They had roles in the cosmos, interacted with humans, standard stuff for ancient gods, in a way.
But then Zecharia Sitchin arrived on the scene, back in the 70s, and he offered a radically different interpretation.
Radically different is right. Starting with his book, The 12th Planet, he looked at these Sumerian gods and basically said, hang on, these aren't just myths.
You thought they were literal beings.
Literal extraterrestrial beings, yeah. He proposed they came from a planet he called Nibiru.
Nibiru, okay.
Which, according to him, had this really long elliptical orbit swinging through our solar system only every few thousand years.
And it gets wilder, because Sitchin didn't just say they visited. He claimed they actually created us, humans.
Yes, that was the core of his argument, and he tied it back to that Atrahasis epic we mentioned.
How so? What was the connection there?
Well, in the epic, you have these lesser gods, the Ijigi, who are doing all the hard labor for the higher gods, the Anunnaki. And they rebel. They're tired of digging canals and, doing the grunt work.
Okay.
So Sitchin read this not as gods complaining, but as a record of the Anunnaki needing workers. And his interpretation was that they solved this problem by genetically engineering early hominids on Earth to create Homo sapiens. Us.
And why?
Yeah.
What was the work they needed done?
Gold mining. Sitchin theorized the Anunnaki needed gold, possibly for their home planet Nibiru, maybe to repair its atmosphere or something. So humans were essentially created as a slave race to mine gold.
Wow. Okay. So that really puts a fork in the road, doesn't it? Is this like a hidden history, an actual account of aliens creating humans for gold?
Or is it a myth? A symbolic story the Sumerians told to explain their world, maybe the hardships of labor, the hierarchy of society, their relationship with their gods.
That's the big question we need to tackle, which means we have to look at the other side. What does science say?
And science tells a very, very different story. It's not about sudden creation by visitors.
It's about gradual change over vast timescales, right?
Exactly. Human evolution, unfolding here on Earth over millions of years, driven by natural selection, genetic changes, environmental pressures, the whole evolutionary process.
So what are some of the key pieces of evidence for that? Where do we start?
Well, the fossil record is crucial. We have finds like Sahelanthropus judensis.
Okay, how old is that?
Around 7 million years old. One of the earliest potential hominins we know of, showing some signs of walking upright. That's a huge step on our lineage, long before any supposed Anunnaki arrival.
7 million years. That's incredible. Then you see other species appearing over time.
Definitely. You see the rise of the genus Homo, species like Homo habilis, Homo erectus, leading eventually to us, Homo sapiens.
And when do we, Homo sapiens, show up in the record?
The earliest fossils generally accepted as Homo sapiens are from around 315,000 years ago, found in Morocco. But again, that's the culmination of a very long process.
And it wasn't just about physical changes, right? There's evidence of behavior, too, like tool use.
Absolutely. Tool use goes way back. There were those really old tools found in Kenya, remember? Lamekwi 3.
Right. How old were they again?
About 3.3 million years old. That's older than the Homo genus itself, likely made by earlier hominins like Australopithecus or Kenyanthropus. It shows sophisticated behavior developing long, long ago.
So intelligence toolmaking, that wasn't suddenly gifted to us.
The evidence suggests it developed gradually over millions of years. And then there's genetics, DNA. That tells a powerful story too.
What does our DNA reveal about this?
Well, for one thing, it confirms our deep African origins and our connections to other archaic humans, like Neanderthals.
Ah, the Neanderthal interbreeding.
Exactly. Most people today with non-African ancestry carry, a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. It shows we weren't isolated. There was interaction and mixing between different Homo groups right here on Earth.
So looking at all that, fossils, tools, DNA, is there any room in that scientific picture for, like, alien genetic engineering a la Sitchin?
Honestly, based on everything we currently know, no. There's just no credible scientific evidence for it. Nothing in the fossil record looks suddenly engineered. Nothing in our DNA points to an external non-terrestrial source messing with our genome in that way. Our evolution fits perfectly within a natural, Earth-based framework.
Okay. And what about Nibiru, the supposed home planet? Has astronomy found anything like that?
No. Astronomers have searched extensively. A massive planet on a 3,600-year orbit, as Sitchin described. It would have noticeable gravitational effects on the other planets. We'd see perturbations, wobbles.
We don't see those.
We don't! The orbits of our known planets are very well understood, and they don't show any signs of being influenced by a large undiscovered planet like Nibiru. The overwhelming consensus is that it just doesn't exist.
So the scientific picture is pretty clear then. Gradual evolution on Earth, no aliens, no Nibiru.
That's the evidence-based understanding, yes.
Mhm.
It's a stark contrast to Sitchin's narrative. One relies on interpreting ancient myths in a very specific, literal way. The other relies on observation, evidence, and the scientific method.
Okay. But if the science is so clear, why is the Anunnaki idea still so popular? You still hear about it all the time. What's the appeal?
That's a really good question. I think there are a few things going on. Part of it is just the mystery of ancient texts, isn't it?
Yeah, they feel distant and wise, maybe.
Exactly. They're fragmented, open to interpretation. There are gaps, and people love to fill gaps, especially with extraordinary explanations. Sitchin provided a very dramatic, almost sci-fi way to read these Sumerian stories.
And maybe the scientific explanation, evolution, maybe feels a bit, I don't know, less special compared to being created by star gods.
That could definitely be part of it. There's a human tendency, I think, to want a grand cosmic origin story, something that connects us directly to the heavens, makes us feel significant on a universal scale. Alien Creators fits that bill nicely for some people.
More exciting than slow adaptation, perhaps.
Perhaps. And don't forget the power of popular culture. Sitchin's books were bestsellers. They reached a huge audience, presented these ideas accessibly. Once an idea like that gets out there, it takes on a life of its own.
And it's still alive today, right? Like online.
Oh, absolutely. You just have to look at platforms like X or forums online. People are still debating Nibiru, still talking about the Anunnaki creating humans. It's this weird mix of ancient myth and modern internet culture. The conversation keeps going.
It makes you wonder, though, even if these myths aren't literally true, scientifically speaking, could they still hold some kind of meaning? Like, were the Sumerians encoding something else in these stories?
That's a really interesting way to look at it. Myths often work on multiple levels. They might explain natural phenomena, sure, but they also explore human nature, power structures, our place in the universe, the burden of work.
So the Entrahasses might not be about aliens needing gold, but maybe about, I don't know, the relationship between rulers and laborers, or humanity's relationship with the divine, or just how tough life was.
Exactly. Myths can contain cultural truths, philosophical insights, even psychological explorations without being literal history or science. Maybe the Anunnaki story tells us something profound about how the Sumerians saw their world, their gods, and themselves, even if it doesn't tell us about extraterrestrials.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up then. What are the main takeaways for someone listening to this in 2025?
I think the first big takeaway is this. The Anunnaki myth, especially Sitchin's version, is a really compelling story. It's imaginative, it draws on ancient sources, but there's just no scientific evidence supporting the idea that aliens created or engineered humanity.
Right. That part is myth, not science.
Correct. And the second point is that the scientific explanation, human evolution by natural processes over millions of years, is incredibly well supported.
By fossils, genetics, archaeology.
All of it. It forms a consistent, evidence-based picture of our origins right here on Earth.
So it seems like you can appreciate the Anunnaki story as, well, a fascinating piece of ancient culture and modern interpretation.
Definitely. Appreciate it as a powerful narrative.
But when it comes to understanding where we actually came from, we should probably stick with the science.
That's where the evidence leads us, yes. And the scientific story of evolution, when you really dig into it, is pretty amazing in its own right. The immense timescale, the transformations, the connections between all life. It's a profound story, too, even without needing aliens.
That's a great point. Our actual history is pretty mind-blowing.
It really is.
Okay, so to summarize, we looked at the Anunnaki myth, Sitchin's alien angle, and contrasted it with the robust scientific evidence for human evolution. Very different pictures.
Very different. And maybe that leaves us with a final thought to consider. Given how much we seem drawn to these big, grand origin stories,
Yeah.
what other beliefs, maybe ones we take for granted, could be interesting to examine in the same way, looking at both their history, their cultural context, and the actual evidence we have today? It's kind of a constant process, isn't it? Reevaluating what we think we know.
That's definitely something to chew on.